welcome everyone to this month's webinar, hosted today regarding the power of a strong baseline, bridging your data and goals. My name is Anja Padget, and I work at Delogue as head of ESG and communication. Today we have a great program for you guys to run through. So I'm going to start off by sort of setting the stage, just giving you a bit of information about where we are, of course, and just why we're here today for this webinar. And then I'll be presenting our guest today, and we'll do a bit of questions with these guys and go through, and they can explain a bit about what they work with and why they're here today, of course. You are, as always, very welcome to ask any questions. There is the Q&A. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A as we go along and ask your questions to either myself or our guest today. So just pop them in there, and I'll ask them, of course, to everybody. So let's start off. So, of course, why we're here today, we always have, I always bring up this picture as one of the first things to sort of say, well, we have an industry, we have a textile industry that we are approaching. And of course, we had a bunch of people go together for this to figure out some legislations to push the agenda a bit. And they came up with quite a while ago now, of course, with a strategy in regards to sustainable and circular textiles. And the strategy was to reach something by 2030. And of course, that's what everybody knows as of now. I don't think for anybody that's coming as any surprise. So, of course, this is something that everybody's very much aware of in their daily work, and how to be able to work with that, and how, of course, to prepare for it, not to say the least. But it also meant that a lot of brands out there, a lot of companies were really met with very many new wordings, very many new abbreviations that they had to, first of all, of course, understand, and what would that then entail for them, and how to prepare for all of these different initiatives coming from the EU, of course, but also coming with this trickle-down effect from their customers on asking very many different information from you guys, from the brands, of course. Now, the reason that we are, of course, here today, and the reason for doing these sort of webinars together with our partners, is, of course, to emphasize the fact that we know that one of the things that is very much important when we talk about legislation, sustainability in general, just to get ready for this, that technology plays a very big role in this. That there's no questions about that, and I think everybody's very well aware of that as of now. Now, we also know that because Delogue is a PLM system, we know our position in this, and we, of course, know with great respect to the fact that we are a part of an ecosystem. So we, of course, are a platform where things become developed. It's a development platform where products are developed, information on the product is developed in collaboration with suppliers, so that the products in the end, of course, can become reality. But we also know that all of the stuff that we create, or our brands create, our customers create in our platform, is something that needs to be shared with others. And that's, of course, one of the reasons that we're here today, because as you can see, ERP plays a very, very big role in that. We share a lot of data from our platform to the ERP systems to be able for them to continue the journey in the value chain, and to ensure that the brands can continue their work. So that's of course one of the main reasons we are here today. And we, of course, also know that, as mentioned earlier, we know that technology is such a big part of that. That means that data has sort of become very much a survival mechanism for the industry, because there has to be this data flow. There has to be this creation of more data than we've ever experienced in the industry. And that data, of course, needs to flow between the systems for it to become something that they can work with, and something that they can deliver and be compliant in the end with legislation if needed. Now, for us, we're very much focused on the fact that what data is it then that needs to be mapped? What data, how do you do your data management to ensure that? And as a person coming from the industry as well, who haven't worked in the industry, I know that that's something that's also very new for many brands to understand, because data is not something that is a normality for the industry to work with. So that's become a very new thing for the industry to have a look at. The information load, the information level has to be more granular than it ever has to be, have had to be. And of course, we've tried to sort of map the different data points in these three strategies to ensure that you focus your data management on all three, and thereby have at least a very good baseline for how much data you need to collect. Circularity principles is, of course, in terms of what is my product made of, what's the life cycle of my product, how can I ensure that I create a product that can be repaired and can live longer with our customers. Transparency talks a lot about, of course, knowing your suppliers, knowing where are my products coming from, but it's also in terms of information load towards others. It's also about being transparent in communication towards end consumer. So how do I ensure that transparency is a part of my daily work and the data collecting that I do in my supply chain? And of course, the final one is the environmental one, and all of the data is of course also created on our platform, is something that's very much needed to be able to do the environmental impact calculations. We need to know what our products consist of. We need to know the weight. We need to know the origin of it, etc., to be able to actually do those impact calculations. So it's about figuring out all of these data points and how do we collect, first of all, how do we collect them, and how do we store them, and how do we then, of course, share those informations with other platforms such as ERP systems so that they can continue the work after us. And then, of course, a lot of our customers as well, and I'm certain that a lot of brands in general has this focus, is why do we have to do it now? The legislations isn't necessarily set in stone yet for many of them, here especially talking about the DPP. Because of course the overarching legislation is finalized, but what does that then actually entail for the textile industry? And that's yet to come. So for now, last year was a lot of focus on looking at, do we have the right people in the companies, and do we have the right technologies in the companies, and trying to figure out what will be the solution for that. Now, this year, we can really feel the fact that now is about figuring out how do we arrange all of that data and handle all of that data, the current data. So not necessarily something that we've actually collected, but something that we, of course, already have, and can arrange to have from either suppliers or others in our supply chain. And that brings us to sort of the next year, where we'll figure out what will the DPP have to, how do we comply with the DPP in the textile industry? And that would likely mean that we would have to figure out new data points, new information that we need to find that we haven't already figured out, and that we don't know how to find yet, but that we have to figure out. And that brings us, of course, to when we then need to comply with the DPP legislation. And of course, as many know, the textile industry is very much prone to having a long development phase. Approximately, it could be that many brands work with about a year, which means that you have to get started quite early for it to be ready for the DPP. So that's why it's very important to have a look at all of this already now, start looking at why it's important, what we need to collect, and start to figure out how do we then collect it. So so that's why we're sort of pushing it to be at early stages. And of course, that's also where we play a role as a PLM system, because we know that we have a lot of the main data for the product creation. So the bill of material is, of course, existing in a PLM system. That's where we have sort of the recipe for a product. And that is the information that really needs to be more granular than it ever has been. Both of course, in terms of the main fabric, what is the composition, how much does it weigh, how much is used in the product, etc. But then, of course, also trims, packaging, all of the different things that sum up to being the products that you then in the end produce. So that's why we of course see that we also try and educate our customers in how do they best possibly use our platform so that they can start the journey there with collecting the data, and then by ensure that that data can be further transferred to others so that they can continue their work once the development phase is done. And now, of course, I would like to introduce to you my guest today. So today I have with me Per from TRIMIT. Welcome, Per.
Thank
I
you.
also have Maiken and Lauritz, who is from Kingsland, and that is a joint customer for TRIMIT and Delogue. So welcome to you guys as well. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so that we go. There we go. And I would just like, first of all, maybe Per, you could start off by just introducing yourself and, of course, where you work and what TRIMIT works with.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Per, as you said. I'm working in TRIMIT, which is a company developing software to the fashion industry. We are a ERP vendor, so what you talked about before is just down our road. We see ourselves as the data container of what everybody else is picking up and distributing these informations wherever they have to go. So in general, we are focusing on all the process in the fashion industry and trying to maintain them in the ERP system.
Amazing, thank you. And Maiken and Lauritz, if you could introduce yourselves and of course where you are and what Kingsland is.
Of course, my name is Maiken. I'm buying and production coordinator here at Kingsland.
Yeah, and I'm Lauritz, IT manager is my title, and I manage basically all of our ERP and integrations to Delogue as well and stuff like that.
Yeah, and Kingsland is a brand producing equestrian wear, clothing and accessories, but also horse gear, so saddle pads and halters and everything for the horse. And I sit with the PLM part in the product development and the buying part. So Lauritz and I, of course, have a lot of shared interest in our tech stack.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. So, let's just start off with you, Per. So sort of let's just bring it up to sort of how do you work? What's the most common sort of data challenges that you see fashion brands are facing today? And of course, how do you sort of help them, work with them when they ask you this question?
Yeah. The most common thing I see when I'm around talking to customers in the industry is that they have a lot of data silos. So that means they have a lot of information in spreadsheets or in some parts that are not connected. So that means that they are taking decisions on things that are not aligned sometimes, and that is why connecting these things in one system and have one thought of truth is a good thing. What we are helping with is, of course, doing that, implementing ERP, connecting with you guys and others in the ecosystem, so that you only have to type in things one time and you have the same truths all around. Of course, in this industry as well, the variation handling is a huge thing, because you have a lot of SKUs, you have a lot of styles, you have a lot of colors, sizes in combinations, and we take care of that in a seamless way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think diving into that, if maybe from you, Maiken, or maybe Lauritz can sort of down to Kingsland, how you then work with sharing your data between the systems. Can you just sort of go about how do you then work with all of this data sharing? If you think about what Per just mentioned, how does that work with Kingsland?
From the beginning of the product side in the Delogue system, as you also said, that's where we have all our standard data when the product is being developed, and then through the process from product development until the first samples to salesman samples. We have different steps where we continuously fill on more data. And once the product is ready, or what you can say, then we have this integration together with TRIMIT, which means that instead of previously where we had manual work where we had to extract data in Excel format and having to upload it in different platforms, then now we have like a seamless integration where I have to push one button and then the style is being transferred into our ERP system. And yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think like as what Per spoke about, I think I see Excel as an excellent tool, but what we've sort of basically eliminated is having all of this important data split between old Excel sheets and stuff like that. So we don't have manually, we don't manually like send files to each other. So we've got the product department working on the product in Delogue, and then once they are, as Maiken said, ready to be sort of used and handled by the sales department and the other departments, we push them to Business Central with our TRIMIT solution, and then we can sort of work on them from there. The sales department can start selling them, and yeah. So back to the single source of truth is the main topic, I think.
And as you also said, the thing about the updating, back in the days before we had this integration, if we updated prices on a style, if we updated the material composition, if we updated the tariff codes, weights, anything, just a small detail on a style, that would mean for one of us to sit manually, take out the style involved, for example, Lauritz, upload it again in the ERP system, and then making sure to our Power BI or B2B or B2C platforms that they were also manually updated. Where now we push the button and I know if I change the price, if I update a weight or anything, within a very short period of time, all of the different platforms using this product afterwards will also have the same information. So we eliminate a lot of manually work, a lot of miscommunication. Yeah.
That's really good. And I think as there's also sort of a safety net right there where you sort of feel safe in that the data is transferred and you don't have to check it. It isn't necessarily depending on a human sitting and checking it. It happens smoothly for you.
Yeah. And also previously, without the integration we had with TRIMIT, there was one in the company who could do this. That was before Lauritz was here as IT manager, but we had one person in the company who could do this extract upload. And if he was away and you had an update or anything, you just had to wait. Where now we are a lot of people in the product and buying department who knows how to do this. Lauritz also can access the PLM system. So it's a lot less vulnerable for us.
Yeah, definitely.
It's as you say, a safety net.
Exactly. Yeah. And when do you sort of say now is the product is ready? When in the sort of development phase do you say now now we push it to the ERP system?
Because we handle our salesman samples in our warehouse and put them on stock, so we also have a use of the samples after the collection, then we can send them out to sample writers or sponsor writers. We often do it before our sales meetings, so when all of the basic product information is in, when the item list is filled out, when we have everything regarding the supplier, the material, weight, prices, we transfer the style so we can generate barcodes in our ERP system, which are then provided to the supplier so they can make stickers and attach to all our salesman samples. And in that way, we don't only handle samples manually, we also now handle them much more automatically. We have a tracking on which sample we have in stock. Our marketing department, sales department, they can use these samples as a working tool also, where before we had it in boxes and someone had to walk to the box in the warehouse and dig out the sample that was on an Excel sheet. As Per says, a lot of Excel sheets. So often before the sales meeting, then as much as the data is filled out and we transfer the styles also, so they proceed to the Power BI system or any other system where we need to prepare any analysis and follow any sales numbers or other tracking.
That's good. Perfect. And Per, maybe you can sort of, because that all sounds so amazing, of course. I think if you could maybe share a bit about how have you assisted maybe specifically Kingsland, but just in general, how does TRIMIT assist companies in this process and sort of get them into this strong operational data way of working?
The biggest thing that you have to be aware of is that you have to know what your needs are.
Yeah.
Of course, we help with that. When implementing a system, then you have to look, of course, on the system, what it can, but also what are your needs right now and what are your coming needs. And then you have to go through phases where you fulfill that. What we do, of course, is that we, together with the customer, look on how they are working right now, and then saying that TRIMIT can do this standard. Should we move your processes a bit so you could be in the way we would like you to work? And of course, then we look on the entire ecosystem. Who are they dealing with? Is it Delogue? Do they have a PIM? Do they have a B2C that we have to connect to? So we also have to take that in consideration when we're building up a system together with them. But of course, we have a standard that we always try to look at. Is that good enough? And if it's good enough, then we go with that, of course.
Perfect. And maybe let's talk a bit about, so also a bit about what I mentioned in the beginning in terms of all of these legislation coming our way, all of that's hitting. And we, of course, we always say to our customers as well, and just in general, that data is so important. And that's sort of the starting point to get ready, because that's also one thing that has, of course, been very difficult for the textile industry to sort of grasp the very big job that it is to collect all of this. How has Kingsland gone about this?
I think as many others, a bit overwhelmed still.
Yeah.
But trying to follow all of the regulations, trying to join like this, maybe different webinars where we can be informed. And then we kind of said, okay, we have Delogue, which is like the perfect standard template for us, because a lot of the information we need to be able to provide, to be compliant, is possible to fill in Delogue, and whatever we might need, because Delogue is also very customizable. We can add the different fields. For example, in our custom fields, we have a lot of different options we have created ourselves. In that way, we can make space for the data in the system. So right now we are trying, as again, many others probably are, locating what data we actually have, what data we are missing, because not only in the product development, but also in the other departments, because this is also an important topic for sales. It's important for marketing. It's regarding the whole communication. So we are kind of identifying the gaps, both in regards to product, but also in regards to suppliers, and then filling in what we know, because I think many companies, for example, with bill of materials, we know how wide it should be, but everyday lifetime resources, then maybe it's not in all companies prioritized enough, you can say. So we have been working very hard on really getting everything in, and then making space and ways of working into the log system, so we can implement all this new data that we right now are gathering from our suppliers.
Yeah.
And then, of course, together with Lauritz, also making a plan on how we can take this data that we now are filling in the Delogue system and actually move it to the other platforms, so it's workable for our sales department or marketing department to take the same information and spread across the different platforms where we need to communicate on these legislations.
Yeah, yeah.
If I can,
Sure.
If I can elaborate on that, the general thing I think that companies has to be aware of is start right now. Has to try to practice on how to get these data from the supplier or the supply chain, because it was a fine timeline that you showed, but you have to practice to be ready in 27, because you have a lot of suppliers who's not able to give you the information right now. So you have to tell them that they have to be ready to do this, and when they're ready to do, then of course, if they are sending them on Excel spreadsheets, then you're back to manual handling again. So we have to set up systems to talk, so you don't have to have a lot of manual work, of course.
Yeah. And that was actually what I was going to ask you, Maiken, as well, because how has it been with the suppliers then? I mean, they are such a big part of all of this data collecting, because of course they sit with, let's say, 90% of the data that we are in need of. So how has it been working with them for this data collecting and information?
I think as Per says, a lot of companies, including ourselves, started collecting this data in Excel sheets, both because you can easily feel on the suppliers that when we first started setting up all of these new requirements, they were maybe a bit shocked. But as we also often talk about internally here, is that the good thing is that this is a general requirement from the whole industry. If they want to sell to European market, they have to follow the legislations and they have to provide this and be more transparent than before. And I think some of the talks we have had with some of our suppliers are maybe their fear of being transparent, because that they fear we will use this information to go around them and work maybe directly with the factory, or take their fabric and use with another supplier. So building up this trust with our suppliers, we have some very good suppliers that we have worked with long term. So that's of course an advantage, but we're also onboarding new suppliers. So building up this trust and informing them why we are requesting these informations from them, and making sure that they can safely provide this to us, and that we do it because we want to be compliant, and not because that we want to take the information and use it without them, or not too strong, or the collaboration.
Exactly.
So it's difficult, and also that's one part of it, but also for some of the suppliers, they maybe don't even know where everything is coming from, because some go to the local market, some source from a fabric mill, and it can be difficult for them also, I think, to identify exactly where everything is coming from. And if it's a supplier who doesn't have own factories, they also have to do some sort of audits to follow along. So I think as we find it overwhelming, I also think that the suppliers, they are having to figure out how to handle this, and they also have an issue, I think, with time and resources, because who in there, like we sit here and discuss, okay, how are we handling this? Who is handling which part of this new huge project? But they are in the same situation out there. So it's also about the collaboration between us and them, and also helping each other, for us making a good template for them in Delogue to fill out the information, and giving them training in the Delogue system and workshops on how to upload. So as Per says, we avoid that everything comes in Excel sheets forever. And then for them to understand that this is also to help their business.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And maybe Lauritz, because I think one of the things that of course, we meet a lot in the industry is that there's not that many that is so lucky to have an IT guy internally. And of course, a lot of them are struggling in terms of how to figure out both, of course, which platforms to use, what will be the necessity for us to have, but of course also how do we ensure that all of this data can flow through. So maybe you can share a bit about your internal work, how have you gone about it, and why has that been so important for Kingsland to work, to have you in internally?
I think it's mostly like what I've been doing here is probably I sort of speak to all the departments, and which I think is what's been working well. Like we've got all this data coming from Delogue, and then like sales, they need to know some specific things as well. Like we've got the collections typically delivered in drops. So something is going to be delivered in March, something in April, and this is decided in Delogue before we start selling. So I think we sort of work together, figure out what do we need data wise, so that when we push the all the items or styles to our TRIMIT Business Central, everything is ready, and we push them through, and then the sales department can the items will be ready to be they can put it on sales orders, and then because of our setup in TRIMIT, they'll go through with the correct shipping dates, and we can see these items are going to be available here, we can sell it there. So yeah, I think that's the sort of the main thing that we work. It's become much easier for us to work together across departments.
Yeah, because you've been sort of a coordinating role between the departments, but also I think you mentioned in terms of which data, right? Because I think that's also something that, of course, many is struggling with. Which data is actually, which do we have to have, and which do we have to have for TRIMIT to continue their work, but of course also legislation-wise and so on. How have you? I don't know if that's you, Lauritz, or Maiken to answer that, but how have you sort of structured that in your company in terms of who does what data-wise, who collects what, who inputs which data points? How have you split that in your company?
I think if we say data in general, we try to have in different departments one that is like the go-to person. Yeah. So we know, okay, if it's regarding this, Lauritz is like the stakeholder and everything, then I care for the PLM. We have one for the B2B page. We have one for the Power BI, which Lauritz helps set up, where people can also come in with wishes, because that's like a very great analysis tool that we use a lot. So if someone sits and miss data, they can go to Lauritz and say, we need to be able to track on performance of this, on numbers of this. And then Lauritz know, okay, if that is information that needs to start from the beginning, from the product, then I have to go to Maiken for the PLM. So we get this set up from the beginning and make sure that it follows all of the steps. And if we take legislation wise, I think right now the focus is maybe in our department with the product development and the design, buying, and production. But it needs to be a holistic approach. It needs to involve every department. But I think right now, if we take, for example, with the digital product passport, that's starting with us. But we need, of course, to have a dialogue with all departments on how do we want to communicate this, for example, on our webpage. Do we want to communicate on with the transparency, and how do we take that right now? We know we have the supplier and Delogue, we know we can move it to Business Central with the TRIMIT integration, but how do we move it from there to the next platform? And that's where TRIMIT also comes in to meet our demands. So I think we try to have overall one in each department, and then right now it's a focus mostly in a smaller loop, also due to, as you said, the data being overwhelming, that everybody doesn't just collect everything, but that we start making a plan, and as Per say, figures out what it's need to have and what is nice to have. And right now starting with what do we need to have, and then building on top of that.
That's good. And maybe that leads into sort of the final questions, because I think it's, of course, I know it's hard to sort of look into the future, what will the future be and so on. But I always like to ask that question to people who join our webinars, to just sort of say, well, how are we preparing for the future? Because of course it's uncertain, but we know that we need to be prepared, of course, for legislations, but also for a lot of requirements from our customers and so on, not our customers, your customers. So how are you trying to prepare for that? Have you set any goals for that, or is it just to continue in terms of data? How are you sort of preparing for the future?
We have kind of split it into groups, you can say, so that the person with the with everyday handling focuses on what makes sense. So for example, right now I'm looking into the bill of materials with the digital product passport very much in mind, but of course together with the whole department. So we are, for example, planning on doing a workshop together with our design team, saying this is how we do our bill of materials now. To meet the coming requirements, we will need to expand further, and therefore we will have to collect this and this. And we will do a new structure maybe, or we will put it into steps and make a process for it, where now we fill in all of the things that we have and what you normally fill in the bill of materials, but maybe not as detailed as we will need to be able to do, also because right now we don't know exactly how to report on it. So we have to kind of make the data a bit widespread, because we don't know exactly what it is that we're going to pick out. So I think we have this better safe than sorry approach right now, trying to cover it all.
Yeah.
And then we also have had some work with some external partners in regarding to setting realistic goals, and also goals that we, with our data that we transfer through systems, can actually measure on, and defining all of the risks and all of the places where we actually maybe are compliant. Yeah.
Good. I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about you, Per? Same question. So of course for TRIMIT, maybe also for how you prepare in terms of for TRIMIT, but maybe also how you prepare when you talk to the customers, what you get ready for. What do you say?
Yeah, of course we are looking into the technology. What can we do? Business Central is coming with a lot in terms of sustainability. So of course we are looking on what they are coming to. We have made a lot. Then we are looking on AI-powered decision making, because we have to, all these handlings we have to make has to be done wisely, and AI is there, so why not use that? And of course, then when we are talking with our brands, then we are talking on exactly what Kingsland has done, building into phases, starting to collect the data and make sure that the data is in a way that we can say that they are good enough, and transparent. And then afterwards we could think, how are we going to present this on that could be on the digital product postcard that we deliver, or anyone else, but what are we going to do when we're going to present it? Has it to be on a platform that's very general, or should we make our own with our own brands, or so you can look at it as a sales environment as well. But I think that is later on. Now we have to focus on getting data into the system, be aware that the data is correct, and when the legislation comes, then we have to see, do we have enough, or are we missing out something? Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect. That aligns very well, I think, with everybody as well, right? I mean, it's about collecting all of the data and see how we can get ready in the end. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for your inputs. I will just share my screen again, if I can get it to work here. Oops, not that one, that one. I think I'm sharing the right one now. Yep. So I just, as a final thing, and before we round up here, and thank you again so much, you guys, for joining in. I think it's really interesting to have the inputs, and yeah, just to get some insights into, of course, TRIMIT, but also from a brand perspective, how are you working with all of this in your daily life? So that's really great. Thank you so much. I just wanted to give a shout out to the next webinar we also have, of course. We have every month at Delogue Uncovered, where Pernille and I sit together and sort of just answer your questions. So you can join in just on the day, and if you have any questions to our platform or to ESG legislations, I'll try and answer best possible. And you can always send the questions to us prior, so that we are sort of prepared for it. But otherwise, we'll just go along for that half hour and we normally just open our platform and show, if you have a question to the platform, we just show that as well. And then I wanted to, of course, use this time, see if I can get it to work here. I wanted to use this time to do a bit of promotion for something that's very, 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 very interesting for us, because we are hosting an event on 15th of May in Copenhagen. Delogue will host, together with our very, very trusted partners such as TRIMIT, where we will be at Moltke's Palais in the center of Copenhagen. It'll be a whole day of very interesting thought leadership talks on stage. We'll have a stage for TRIMIT and other partners to, you know, talk about their solution, of course, but giving a bit of case stories, doing it tangibly to showcase, well, how do we actually work? And of course, you'll get to meet all of the partners. There's going to be food and coffee and everything you can, enjoy that day, to have a really inspiring day, to meet all of these and just be inspired to how to go about this this new way of working in the fashion industry. So I hope you'll all join. We'll of course send you the link so that you can sign up for the event, and you can also just check out our website. We'll update that continuously with all of the information on the event, and of course who will be the speakers and so on. So I hope you'll join us. All right, but thank you so much for today. Thank you again to you guys for joining in, and until next time, I'll see you then.